but it's on. Some victories, many losses. Yeah. About solutions. This is where I make myself immensely unpopular. See, every 10 years there's a new mantra. And this is the killer theorem that will solve everything. In the 1960s, if you remember, it was family planning. Family planning, enforce it. 30 years later, the same country that advised us that gets a right-wing, Christian outlook that says family planning is the worst thing in the world. But in the 60s, they were encouraging us to do mass sterilizations and family planning and all that stuff, right? Then, in the 70s, it was the word development. Whatever that meant, whatever it means, it's still very debatable. In the 90s and 2000, that word is microcredit. Now let me explain where I stand on microcredit. I support microcredit, but it's a tool. It is one tool in the toolbox. Don't romanticize it where it becomes the solution and the transformation for everything. That's not possible. I can just show it to you in volumes. First of all, microcredit, in my opinion, works best when it is micro, when it's in the control of those women in the village. That's what it was about originally, right? A bunch of women in a village started a rotational credit system, which we now call microcredit or microfinance. And by doing so, what did they achieve? They achieved that they were able to bypass the money lender, they were able to bypass the banks, the bureaucracy, the red tape, and therefore create some things with which they could buy a couple of, maybe a goat or two goats, maybe some head of poultry. They were able to do that, and that worked, and that's good. And by the way, I support two such groups financially, because they've not changed their outlook and they still function like that. In the meantime, what is called microcredit is now being run by the World Bank, the IMF, by Citibank, by State Bank of India, by the Imperial Bank, by the whole idea of the women controlling the credit system is defeated. It's completely gone out of their hands, and you've built empires out of it. That was exactly what the women were trying to avoid. That's exactly what they were trying to avoid. Another thing, what are the interest rates of these groups? 24 to 36%. 24 to 36% is the interest rate by the time it reaches the woman in the village. In 2006 August, the Andhra Pradesh government, legislature, unanimously passed legislation curbing this kind of interest rate, with the Chief Minister stating on the floor of the House, these guys are worse than money lenders. Because they do it with a noble cause. Okay? 6 districts banned a large number of such groups. There are very genuine groups. There are very, very genuine groups that do terrific stuff, but I'm trying to say it is micro. By definition, it's micro. An average microcredit loan is 6,000 rupees, 9,000 rupees. Is there any state in the country of India where you can buy 1 acre of land for 6,000 rupees? Is there any crop in which you can finish in 6,000 rupees the cultivation routine for the whole season? There's another problem. Everybody in the village cannot sell eggs to everybody else in the village. Microcredit is a good tool for the woman for an additional income. It is not a substitute for rural credit. It is not a substitute for bank credit. Why don't we give Chrysler, GM and Ford microcredit? Huh? Why shouldn't they be given microcredit?
Yeah, like I said, those who have the solution,
they become the problem.
Yeah. The problem.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what the figure is. For instance, Bangladesh, for instance, when Grameen completed 15 or 20 years, it started in the 70s, and then you have the United Nations ran a box in the UNDP which really surprised me. What do you think is the share of total credit of microcredit organizations in a given country?
Less than 1%.
Less 0.6% in the case of Grameens, BRAC, all of them together, all the hundreds of clone organizations together accounted for less. But that was in the mid-90s. Maybe now it's 1%, maybe now it's 2%. It is not a transformational percentage. Okay? I'm saying that I want it there, but I don't want it deified as something that's going to transform the world. I want it as a tool in my toolbox. Yeah.
This will be the last,
Yeah.
the last couple of questions.
I have a question, because you mentioned once or twice, where do these farmers go?
I could tell you, yeah. Some of them, yeah.
No, and the situation that you mentioned in the United States, the reason why there's no sympathy is because the way in which it's understood is that these small farmers should sell their land. The rationale is it's unviable, it's an antiquated form of production, and they should move into the cities. So how does the situation in India, how do we not have this understanding assimilate to a failure of industrialization and a failure of the narrative of capital, and just say that these farmers ought to move into the cities and become workers?
Well, first of all, when we talk about outmoded forms of production, I would like to point out that America's industrialized farming is the most wasteful, most financially bankrupt form of production ever devised by human mind. When you have an agricultural system that needs a subsidy of 1 billion a day, they should leave farming. They should leave farming. You need non-corporate agriculture. That's what you need. That's your solution. Look, what efficiency are you talking about when guys have, for 20 years, you used to pay, for 20 years you paid farmers to shove their grain into the sea. Then you paid farmers not to grow. The biggest beneficiary of cotton subsidies in the United States is a Californian heiress. You look at the subsidy list, you can get them out. Okay, AP publishes the list. It does look at millions of USAID checks. You know who were your struggling homesteads who got checks in 2001, for instance, because that came out. Among the poor struggling homesteads was Ted Turner, the chairman of Chase Manhattan. They got it for rare horticulture, which means that his garden in Connecticut could be looked at. Ted Turner got it because he ran 3 rare wild horse ranches in Vermont, Montana, and some other place I can't remember. Scottie Pippen was one of the beneficiaries of agricultural subsidies. 26 Fortune 500 corporations in this country get your agricultural subsidies. The small farmers whom I saw in Minnesota and elsewhere, where I've gone and stayed for many days trying to understand what their farming is, you know how they're killing themselves? The way your subsidies are structured in this country, it's linked to volumes in many ways. So what's the small farmer in the United States is doing? Every year he's leasing more and more land to keep the bloody volumes up and to keep his subsidies in. So I'm sitting with a guy who's driving a harvester. He's 61 years old. And he's telling me, look, I've got to keep leasing on more just to maintain the bloody volumes and show that I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and I need to keep my subsidy. As we are talking, another harvester moves past us this way. And a really ancient guy is sitting there driving that harvester. I asked him, who's that? He says, oh, that's me, Dad. He's 83. Okay. That's his dad driving a harvester at 83, God's sake. So it's entirely biased against the family farm. It's not meant for them. You can get subsidy for agriculture in this country without ever having planted a seed if your land has been classified as agricultural land at some point in the hoary past. There are states where that is also possible. Now, so I'm saying firstly that I question the idea that industrial agriculture is somehow efficient and the small farmer is not. That's not true. Okay, where you've had in India, in those states where you've had land reforms, productivity has gone up much more where the people have become owners of their land. Okay. The highest rate of growth of agriculture has come in those states that had land reform. Okay. Now, whether people should leave, the question is first of all, who am I to decide, who are you to decide? Now, I'm not against people being taken off agriculture for one reason. There are millions of farmers who don't want to farm anymore because it's driving them insane. If I ask a Vidarbha farmer, do you want your son to be a farmer? He says, why do you hate me? Yeah, because he's sick. And the son doesn't want to be a farmer. He's seen his grandparents and parents slave. If you go to the towns of Minnesota and Oklahoma, you'll find many towns which are entirely senior citizen towns. The young have left.